Zig Ziglar's Secrets of Closing the Sale by Zig Ziglar. Many times, your very best prospect will almost adamantly refuse an appointment because he doesn't want to waste your time or his time. He is often the best prospect for the very simple reason that he knows he either wants or needs, or both, the product, goods, or service you are selling. However, at this particular time, he doesn't feel he is in a position to take action. Therefore, he doesn't want to be tempted by viewing the demonstration or listening to your presentation. He gives you the excuse that he doesn't want to waste his time or yours by looking at something he knows he can't buy. The 1902 close. I tell the story, which is a true story, because I want you to do a lot of things. First, I want you to translate this story to your specific situation. I called the procedure the redhead used on me the 1902 close because in 1902, a man named Frederick Sheldon described this close in his book. The redhead had learned that close by sitting in on some of my sales training classes. When she heard that 1902 close, she took it and applied it directly to her own situation and need. The second lesson in the story is the fact that for some weird reason, the redhead developed a hearing problem, which I'd never noticed before. I kept saying, too much money, can't afford it, not interested, can't afford it, not interested. To this day, I don't think she heard a word I said. She had already decided she wanted that house, and she wasn't going to listen to any negative talk about not getting it. I believe most salespeople need to be a little hard of hearing when the prospect says he's not interested. Think about it this way. When the prospect says too high or not interested, he's merely saying or implying that he's not going to give you his big stack of money for your little stack of benefits. In those cases, be like my redhead and become a little hard of hearing. Another factor which parallels this line of thinking is the fact that not once did the redhead become defensive or argumentative or antagonistic. The affordable close. Number three, my redhead is an optimist and knows that I am also an optimist. She was confident I can make a bigger payment by getting another speaking engagement or making another sale. You too need to be optimistic that your prospect can handle the purchase. It is an absolute fact that the salesman's expectancy has a direct bearing on the prospect's decision in many, many cases. Expect a sale in every interview. Number four, she asked me a lot of questions, and those questions led me to the obvious decision not only could we get the house, but we should get it. You can sell more by asking than telling. That's the Socratic, after Socrates, method, and it's used by doctors, lawyers, accountants, detectives, and successful people from all walks of life. This is one of the most profound and important issues I will explore in Secrets. Your answer reveals everything about where your heart and interest lies in the world of selling. If in your heart you really feel the sales process is something you do to the prospect, then you are a manipulator. The dictionary defines manipulate to control the action of by management, also to manage artfully or fraudulently. Manipulation, skillful or dexterous management, sometimes for purpose of fraud, state of being manipulated. I'll be the first to admit that manipulators make sales, but in my 36 years in the profession, I've never known even one manipulator who was successful in the profession. As you read Secrets, you will discover my definition of success. If in your heart you feel the sales process is something you do for the prospect, then this book could represent a significant addition to your sales library. Your benefits will be considerable because you are truly interested in benefiting others. The world of selling is often the exact opposite of the world of athletics. I fought in the ring for 2 years. As a matter of fact, the only reason I quit was my hands. The referee kept stepping on them. In the world of selling, you look for the opponent's, prospect's weakness, need, so you can strengthen it by selling him your goods or services. Yet the sales process is something we do for the prospect and not to the prospect. Conclusion, if we are truly professional, we will seek every legitimate means for persuading the prospect to take action for his or her benefit. I use the preceding series of questions to establish in your mind that the customer really is the one who benefits the most. I'm obviously assuming the product is legitimate, is fairly priced, and will perform as expected. Now let's reverse that process and assume that instead of asking you those questions, I had simply said to you, let's face it, my selling friend, as everyone knows, the customer is the winner. Many of you would agree, but an extremely high percentage of you would have facetiously thought, yeah, you are the winners, all right, but then I didn't do too badly myself. You would probably have thought this with a satisfied and mildly sarcastic chuckle under your breath. One of the 5 reasons prospects will not buy from you is they do not feel they need what you are selling. If everybody belonged to the old school of thought, which says we should buy only what we need, then you and all other salespeople would be in serious trouble. I say this because most people have considerably more of everything they need. How many clothes? How much floor space? How much car? How many TVs? How much food do you need? Fortunately for us, in most cases for the prospect, we buy what we want or desire. I deal with desire or lack of it as the first reason the prospect will not buy. Now let's get back to the question of need and what it really means when the prospect says no. In many cases, if not most, the prospect says no because he doesn't know enough to say yes. More on this later. The second reason most people do not buy is they don't have any money. And there are people who really don't have any or enough money. You can use all the techniques in the world and you're still not going to manufacture the money itself. Having made that observation, let me state that I do not want to disillusion anyone, especially if you're new to the world of selling. When it comes to money, some people actually lie to you when they say they don't have any or enough to buy what you are selling. I bet you have a suspicion you've already met some of those folks. The little story verifies that point. Many years ago, when I first entered the world of selling, I was calling on a Funder Burke family in Lancaster County, South Carolina. They raised chickens and sold eggs. I demonstrated a set of cookware for them and several of their friends. It was a complete demonstration. Since it was in their home, I had a chance to look through their cabinets and see the amount of cookware they did not have. Their need for a good set of cookware was obvious. I tried for 2 solid hours to close the sale, but never came close. Mrs. Funderburk kept saying, no money, too expensive, can't afford it. She sounded like a broken record. Then somehow, somewhere, somebody said something about fine china. I don't know if it was Mrs. Funderburk or me. At the mention of it, she wanted that china. Critical sales point. People buy what they want when they want it more than they want the money it costs. Let me sum it up as we explore the best way to build a sales career. People are going to buy, in most cases, what they really want, not necessarily what they need. It is your opportunity and responsibility to sell the legitimate benefits of your goods and services in a legitimate manner so your prospect will want to buy from you again and again. Suppose the prospect says, it seems to me the price is just out of line. The first thing you got to determine is whether the price really is the problem or is there another issue. You make that determination by asking questions. Sales trainer John Hammond has successfully handled thousands of objections by asking, if there were a way I could show you that the price is more than fair and the product is worth every dime we're asking, would you go ahead and take advantage of your offer today? This forces the prospect to make a commitment based on price when his real objection is color, size, style, neighborhood, or something else you could and should identify. If this is the situation, his response is going to be, well, no, not really. Then the salesman can say, then there must be some other reason you are hesitating. Would you mind if I ask what that is? This is a superb procedure for smoking out the real objection. If price is the objection, you continue in this way. Let me ask you, Mr. Prospect, do you like the product? Many times he'll respond, yes, I like the product, but it seems to me that the price is a little out of line. You, softly and gently, Mr. Prospect, wouldn't you agree that it's difficult to pay too much for something you really like? Now the ball's back in their court. Many times, if it's a relatively inexpensive item, your prospect might go ahead and invest, since that question, which forces him to think, could also lead him to make a yes decision. In most cases, if it's a high-ticket item, he will probably think for a moment and say, well, I do like it, but yes, I think you can pay too much regardless of how much you might like it. I know I wouldn't give $50,000 for a Cadillac, even though I might really enjoy having one. The fear of loss clause. Now you're dealing with something which is very basic. So let me repeat. The fear of loss is greater than the desire for gain. You need to establish in that prospect's mind the fact that he's safe in dealing with you, but that he won't lose either money or face by buying from you, but that he will lose product benefits if he doesn't buy from you. One effective way to do this is to say the prospect, Mr. Prospect, you're going to be concerned about price one time. That's the day you buy. You got to be concerned with quality for the life of the product, its life. With this in mind, let me urge you to think about this. In dealing with a price objection, you must remember that many people will automatically say the price is too high, whether they feel that way or not. This is a method many people use because they think that by using it, they'll be able to negotiate a better price. Here is yet another approach to handling the price is too high objection. I'm glad you're concerned about price, Mr. Prospect, because that's one of our most attractive advantages. Would you agree that as a practical matter, a product is worth what it can do for you and not what you have to pay for it? Starting with that premise, let's take a look at what our product will do for you. Objection, the price is too high. You, Mr. Prospect, our company had to make a choice between building our product as cheaply as possible and selling it as a get-by product, or building quality into the product for service, durability, and your long-lasting enjoyment. In short, for long-range value and benefit. With this decision facing us, we try to put ourselves in your shoes. We felt you would prefer to deal with a company that puts everything possible into its product to make it the best and most useful, rather than a company that uses cheap materials and cheap labor to turn out a get-by product. Most people, Mr. Prospect, and I'll bet that includes you, clearly understand that good things are not cheap and think cheap things are seldom good. You do want something you can depend on for good service over the long haul, don't you, Mr. Prospect? Specifically, as he had learned from the recording which covers this close, Ab looked at the prospect, lowered his voice, and said, Mr. Prospect, at State Farm, we decided many years ago that it would be easier to explain price one time than to apologize for poor quality or poor service forever. And I'll bet you're glad we made that decision, aren't you? The prospect said nothing for a few seconds, then firmly said, I'll take it. The sale was almost exactly twice as big as the biggest contract Ab had ever written. I urge you to do what Ab Jackson did. Practice, drill, and rehearse until the words and the right voice inflection becomes a part of you. Do this and you will have developed a powerful tool for persuading your prospect to take the action which will benefit you and him. Buy it and you can sell it. What about you? Are you convinced of the merits of your merchandise? If you're selling Fords and driving a Chevrolet, then my friend, it's costing you a great deal of money. Believe in what you sell, or do yourself, your company, your friends, your victims, and the profession of selling a favor. Change products to get out of the profession. Your failure is predestined. So why prolong the death rattle? The sooner you make the change into something you can honestly and enthusiastically pursue, the sooner you will start climbing the ladder to success. Obviously, there will be some exceptions in buying and using what you sell. For example, if you sell locomotives, $1 million computers or 747s, I don't necessarily believe you have to buy one to prove you believe in it. To emphasize that point, I made the following statement without reservation. If you don't believe the customers are the losers when you don't buy, you're selling the wrong product. If you don't feel a sense of loss for them, you're not going to be as effective and persuasive as you could be. Selling is a transference of feeling, and your prospects are persuaded by your pride and belief in your product than by any proof you submit regarding your product's performance. Until and unless you truly feel that nobody sells a better product value, you really are not completely honest, and your performance will not be at the level you're capable of attaining. In that event, you are obviously the biggest loser because you will miss too many of the close ones. We also know they are going to give you the same excuses you've been giving yourself for the last 5 years. You are well trained. So I know exactly what you're going to do every time they give you an excuse for not selling. You got to sit there with a forced grin on your face, saying to yourself, think positive now, Bill, think positive, Bill. But all the time, deep down inside, you're going to be thinking, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That's the reason I don't have a set of this stuff myself. Let me tell you something, Bill. The smartest thing you'll ever do, even if you got to mortgage your furniture, is to buy a set of your own cookware. Hear me on this, Bill. And I'm going to say to all my selling friends, as you read this book, if you stop reading right here, don't believe or follow through on anything else they say in this book, if you will buy without reservation my next statement, you will immediately be more effective at selling whatever you sell. Selling is essentially a transference of feeling. If I, the salesman, can make you, the prospect, feel about my product the way I feel about my product, you got to buy my product. If there is anywhere in the world you can come up with the money. Now, in order to transfer a feeling, you've got to have that feeling. When you're trying to persuade somebody to do something you have not done yourself, that fact comes across to the prospect. Of course, all salesmen can occasionally con a person into buying something he doesn't really believe in. But if you're going to build an outstanding career, you got to be committed to the product yourself. You got to believe, as Bernie Lovchick from Winnipeg, Canada, the greatest sales manager I know, says, believers are closers. The very word close starts with a C. That C stands for conviction. Take the C out of close and you have lose, which is what you and the prospect do when your lack of conviction and belief influences the prospect. You have to believe in your product so strongly that you bought it yourself. Then you can transfer that feeling to the other individual. In a nutshell, closers own what they sell. The prospect brings up a can't afford it objection. You can, with considerable conviction, point out that your product is so good it's worth sweating and sacrificing for it. Obviously, you will be hypocritical and hence not very convincing if you have not invested in your own product. To repeat myself, if you're selling Fords, you should be driving a Ford. If you sell 747s, locomotives, steamships, or multi-million-dollar computers, you don't need to buy one. But generally speaking, if it's flexible, if it's feasible, you should believe in what you sell so much that you're willing, even anxious to sacrifice if necessary to own it. By way of emphasizing this even further, if you do not honestly feel the prospect is the loser, if he doesn't buy it, then you're not going to be nearly as effective in the world of selling. How can you honestly feel the prospect is going to lose if you're not winning by owning the product? Whatever you're selling should be much in evidence in your home, car, business, or wherever it is used. By its presence, you're saying, I believe. Again, closers own what they sell. Not only should you believe in the product you sell, but you should also believe in and be loyal to the company you represent. Your effectiveness and productivity will be affected by your feelings toward your management and your company. I urge you to read Russell Conwell's Acres of Diamonds, which beautifully illustrates the fact that opportunities and gold mines are everywhere, including right where you are. You can and will find exactly what you look for in your company and in your life. As a sales procedure, it's smart and professional to praise and build your company everywhere you go. After all, how much confidence do you have in someone who badmouths his wife, his city, his company, or any of the people associated with the company? Believe in your product and your company. Transfer that belief to the prospect, and not only will you sell more, you will sell it more easily, and those customers will get you other customers. That's career building selling. General Douglas MacArthur defined security as the ability to produce. As long as you can produce, my selling friend, you have security. The sales profession has a different attitude about life and business. In the non-sales community, when business drops, management generally calls a pity party. That's what Mrs. Mamie McCullough, the lady who started the ICANN course for schools, named them. She also says many pity parties are held on an individual basis. To zero in on all the difficulties, management explains they are going to have to cut the lights off early and let a couple of the janitors, secretaries, and support people go. With a stiff upper lip, they explain that despite the fact things are tough, we're going to fight this and hope for the best. It's true. If our thinking is stinking, our business is going to be in the same shape. Keep your thinking right and your business will be right. The beautiful thing about selling is that it's democracy. In most cases, your company doesn't care whether you're male or female, black or white, tall or short, fat or slim, old or young, introverted or extroverted, even educated or uneducated. The only thing the company cares about in most cases is your integrity and your productivity. There will be some exceptions in the area of education for some highly technical industries. You're recognized, paid, and rewarded based on what you, the individual, do. What does this have to do with you in building your sales career? A lot. Every day you go out to see prospects or prospects come in to see you. On occasion, you can anticipate or expect to be stunned by firm rejections and caustic comments from prospects. It is an occupational hazard. Question, why not build up a mental reserve so when you are rebuffed in any way by your prospect, you are mentally prepared to handle the incident? Positive mental preparation in advance will help absorb the impact of dealing with negative experiences. By the same token, I'm going to tell you this is a positive fact. You're going to have a negative poison dumped into your mind and emotions every day of your life. Events, people, radio, newspapers, and television all participate in the process. Combine this with the fact that in the world of selling, whether you go out to see prospects or the prospects come in to see you, a certain percentage of them will deal with you in a negative way. To be at your effective best in the sales profession, you need to build a substantial mental reserve. This mental reserve of knowledge and right attitude will make a real difference in virtually every sales encounter. The difference will be especially significant to your sales career when you are dealing with the close or borderline cases where the slightest variation in your attitude and knowledge reserve will gain or lose the sale. Generally speaking, all things being equal, the prospect will buy from the salesperson he or she likes. However, as John Wilson points out in his book, Open the Mind and Close the Sale, things are not equal when one salesperson has more knowledge and enthusiasm about the product he sells than a competing salesperson has about the product he sells. In this segment of the secrets of closing the sale, we discovered that H in the heart of your sales career is honesty. E is ego and empathy. A is your attitude toward you, your prospects, and profession. R is for physical, mental, and spiritual reserve. T is for tough, and the toughest thing is love. Now, put those beginning letters together, and they form an acrostic heart, because you see the heart of your sales career is your very own, and if your heart is right, your sales career will be right. The stood-up close. The next day at precisely the appointed hour for the day before, he would again appear at the door. When the host or hostess came to the door, Judge would immediately start with apology. I'm so sorry I missed you yesterday. Did everything in my power to see you, but it just wasn't possible. He was being 100% honest. He had done everything in his power to see them. He had been there at the appointed hour. Judge points out that you will be astonished at the number of grown people who would let him take the blame for their discourtesy. At that point, as he expressed it, he knew the sales was his. Here's why. If they did not have the courage to face him and say no at the appointed time, then they were not psychologically equipped to deal with a highly motivated, enthusiastic, well-trained professional salesperson like him. By responding with that attitude, it's not difficult to understand why he broke the record. At this point, I need to elaborate and explain that the prime reason he was so motivated was he believed with all his heart that the family he was calling on desperately needed, even had to have his set of cookware. He knew it would save them money, work, and precious food value for the children. He truly had a missionary zeal in selling his product. He also understood human nature and the real reason they stood him up. I elaborated on this in the very first segment, but basically the couple wanted the cookware, but didn't think they could afford it and feared they were too weak to say no to their desires. Solution, stand up the salesperson. Reminder, that's the reason you, my sales friend, need to develop the empathy I covered in chapter 8. He is so other people conscious. He never lets his ego hinder his efforts. He understands his function as a professional is not to attempt to help the prospect decide on buying or not buying, but rather to give information so the prospect will have the facts to make an intelligent decision. The professional gives some inspirational, motivational input so the prospect will be inspired to make the right decision. The professional is thick-skinned to the degree that he's not offended easily by what the prospect has to say. This does not mean he accepts abusive language or insulting manners. It does mean he knows that many times the prospect has been abused by other people and is able to understand the prospect is not rejecting him, but is simply refusing the offer he's making. What do you say when your prospect makes a negative statement about a previous purchase? Try this. Look your prospect in the eye and quietly say, in retrospect, Mr. Prospect, I'm confident that most of you would make some of our decisions differently if we could make them again. However, at the time you made this decision, under the circumstances which existed at that moment, and with the information you had at your disposal, I'm confident that most of us would have made the same decision you did. So I wouldn't feel bad about something which happened such a long time ago. The best way to get a prospect to make a favorable new decision is to make him happy with the old decision. There are many reasons Billy Engman does such an incredible volume of business. I've already touched on some of those reasons, but there are 3 others which are as much a part of Billy Engman as breathing. First, Billy expects to sell everyone she calls on. Not only does she expect to sell them, but she expects to sell them a large order this time, and even larger repeat order. Second, Billy feels the order is the result of making a presentation, so she considers the close a natural part of that presentation. She gives everyone she calls on a chance to buy by asking for the order. If that sounds elementary, may I remind you that sales trainer Chris Hegarty points out that 63% of all sales interviews end with no specific invitation to buy. Third, Billy keeps records on all her customers. She knows exactly what they bought, when they bought, and how they paid for it. She plans her callback and prepares the prospect for that callback when she makes the original sale. Equally important, she prepares herself for the follow-up call. She knows the initial order firmly, establishes the trust of the buyer, and puts her in the position of being able to help the customer even more in the second sale. Action now really is the objective of the sales call. I've said it before and I'll say it a dozen times. The prospects who say yes will not run you out of the sales business. The prospects who say no won't put you out of business. But those prospects who say maybe will not only put you out of business, they'll run you out of your mind especially if you are in direct sales. Here's why. If you take each person seriously who says he will buy later, you'll build a backlog of false security, which you plan to cash at an opportune time. Obviously, or you're in an industry where callbacks are a way of life, like detailing doctors and new drugs, offering a new line to a department store, and you promise to see them on your next trip, you keep that commitment. The to it close, like most closes, fits a specific need at a specific time. It's true there are occasions when you can kid a prospect into doing something you could not seriously talk him into doing. Again, you need to study your prospect and your situation, throw in a little common sense, and as our Australian friends would say, give it a go. P.S. If you would like to try it, send me a stamped self-addressed envelope and I'll send you a free round to it.